Hi, Tim Blankenship here with Divorce661.com, and today we're here with Lisa Scholes, who is a mediator, and I wanted to get these videos out to folks. There's a big misunderstanding about what mediators do when it's in regards to family law. So we wanted to get some information out there so we can kind of pull the curtain back on what mediation is in regards to and how it works with family law and divorces specifically. So Lisa Scholes is a mediator slash divorce coach. Mm-hmm. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what that does, what mediation is, and just kind of introduce yourself and your company and what you can do for folks.
Okay. So I'm a private, non-attorney mediator. I know a lot of people know attorneys that also do mediation, and this is kind of a completely different perspective. I have a practice where I help people through the divorce process. They need to have their legal advice from somewhere else. That doesn't come from me, but I work on the communication skills. I work on coming to an agreement that works best for their family. And that's most important to me, is that it fits what they need as a family, especially if there's kids involved. So
regarding kids and family and just the overall decision-making, mediation as opposed to litigation, long-term, especially if kids are involved,
yes,
is going to be beneficial because they're going to divorce, but they're still going to see each other on custody exchanges.
The relationship needs to stay intact.
Yeah.
I mean, you may not like your partner, you may not get along well enough to live together anymore, but when you have children involved, that relationship needs to be where you have those communication skills and you are able to salvage whatever relationship you had left so that your children are not the collateral damage.
Right. So tell us a little bit more about you specifically and your background regarding and how did you get into mediation? How did this come about?
I went through divorce as well several years ago and was like most of the public that I've talked to, didn't know what mediation was. I heard that I was supposed to go to mediation before we had a hearing date. My ex-husband was not interested in participating in that. That was something he wasn't interested in. And I looked further into it, asked a lot of questions. I was getting ready to go back to school to get a graduate degree and decided that was something I wanted to focus on, was mediation and conflict resolution. So I actually received my master's in that specialty in psychology. So I come from a completely different perspective, a different background than attorney mediators do. Mm-hmm. I don't have that litigation mindset. I want a peaceful process, and it is completely in the hands of the parties, of the clients. This is their life. The decisions that they make about their family should come from them and not from anyone else. So more of a facilitator, mm-hmm, trying to ask those important questions that make them think about what's most important at the time.
Now, you brought up education. I want to touch on that because I looked into offering mediation services because as legal document preparation service, we have limitations. So we don't give legal advice. We don't go to court for people and represent them in court in that fashion. We're just here to fill out the paperwork properly, correctly, and give that professional service. And sometimes, even though people have come to us and they think they have all their agreements, something happens and they have trouble coming to agreements, usually about money or something, mm-hmm, like that. And we didn't offer mediation services. So I actually looked into becoming a mediator as an additional service. And what I found was there's no real governing board. There's not any real way of getting certified.
Right.
I mean, I could call myself a mediator today with zero training.
And a lot of people do that. Yeah. There are lots of trainings available. They're very cursory. They just kind of scratch the surface, and it's more of a, okay, now you kind of have an idea of what it's like. Good luck. They kind of throw you out there. Mm-hmm. My educational background was much more intense. It involved cultural differences, differences within different family backgrounds. I mean, it came from every angle that you can think of. And now my work in the court system helps me not only say, hey, this is a great option for your family to do this without having to deal with attorneys, without having to go through the court system, because this is what I know about what happens to families in the court system, because I've been there. And I continue to work there, but my goal is to steer people away from that, because it's just not a happy ending 99% of the time.
And so education is important. If someone's looking for a mediator, you have to really be careful and find out what their background is and make sure it's going to be a suitable.
Well, like you said, anybody can say, hey, I took a 2-week course
Right.
in mediation and now I'm a mediator. And that's not, and the attorney mediators, a lot of times that's what they do and say, now I offer mediation services. They're still coming from a litigation background
Right.
where it's a win-lose.
About the law.
We got the law is the only thing that matters. We need to, if they'll even take one of the parties aside and say, you really shouldn't be agreeing to this.
Really?
It's not in your interest. And they forget that their job is to help the people come together and communicate and not pit. It's just this automatic thing with
It's
them.
just, that's how their brain works.
It's how their brain works. That's how they were trained in law school, and
Right.
that's what happens. So,
Okay. So mediation, if you could put it into a sentence or two, how would you explain what mediation is? I'm sure you get the question all the time. People asking me what mediation is, or some people think that we are mediators.
Right.
So what is mediation in regards to family law?
mediation has existed, and it's so interesting to me because it has existed for thousands of years in many different cultures. It is a new concept to us as Americans in the West because we are so individualized and we like to win and we like to get a leg up, and it's very competitive. So the old kind of communal mediation process is lost on us, and it's starting to come back, and we're starting to kind of get a feel of the benefits of mediation. So the process is peaceful. You're allowed to be heard. You're allowed to get out what it is that's frustrating you. But you're also, we're hopefully as mediators, teachers, and we help translate between the parties. We help them understand. We help them try to get into each other's shoes and find out, well, if I was this, if I was my ex and this is how, why does he feel this way? Why does he want this so badly? Or why does she feel so, it's kind of digging deep. Now, we're not therapists. A lot of times people are like, well, that sounds like family therapy. We don't get into your childhood. We don't get into why you're doing the things you're doing. We're just focusing on this process, these major changes you're making in your family, and we make it non-adversarial, peaceful, supportive, and we really want the parties to hear and be heard. That's what's most important.
Okay. I think that's a good explanation. There is, it seems, you mentioned that we're kind of got away from mediation. It's been there for thousands of years. The courts, and it may be because the courts are so impacted. I tell my clients, the courts don't want you in the system. They don't want you going to court. They don't want you in the courtroom. They want you, if at all possible, to come to the agreements. And I think in 100% of the cases that you're going to make, people involved are going to make better decisions about their divorce and the terms of their divorce than going to court and having some judge who knows you for about 15 minutes making decisions that will then become orders
and impact the rest
case.
of your life. I mean, it is completely out of your hands at that point. You get to the point where the judge is saying, okay, here's what's going to happen. You have lost all control of what happens with you, your money, your house, your kids. It is in somebody's hands, like you said, somebody that's known you all for 15 seconds. Yeah. Maybe reviewed your case really quickly and then decides the rest of your life together.
That's right.
So and you're right, they don't want you there. They are inundated. They are stacked up, and they just, it's like a cattle call. They're just trying to move people through, and it's a very, very slow process.
Yeah, in fact, we have some clients that come in and say, well, I'm just going to let the court decide. And I have to tell them that doesn't work that way. In fact, the court's not going to get involved in your divorce case unless you specifically ask them to get involved. So you can file for divorce, you can go through the process, but it doesn't automatically get picked up for the courts. You don't automatically get a court date. You have to specifically ask for a court date for a trial, because otherwise they don't want to touch it.
And it could be months in advance.
It is months. It is right now. It is if you wanted to get the trial setting, which is a request, that takes 60 to 90 days just to get the date. Then your date's 60 to 90 days out from that, and that's if it's that's just to set the court date. That's not the court date. And if it's like a long-term trial where you think it's going to be several days, you're talking about a year for a date. And
you're right. People don't realize the process and what's involved, and they don't realize that you are getting billed by your attorney while you wait to go to court. You don't start when you walk in the court doors. You're being billed for your phone calls, you're being billed for your emails, you're being billed for your time. And in mediation, coming from a non-attorney mediation setting, but my setup is completely different to where I want your questions. I want you to be in control of this process. I want you to know what it is that we're doing and that the process makes sense to you. I'm not going to bill you 0.2 for an email or 0.2 for a phone call. I want you to call me, and I want to make sure that you are on board and that this is something that's working for you. So as far as, the fee setup, it's also a completely different ballgame than what the attorneys have set up.
Right. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the cost of divorce, the cost of mediation, because it can be very expensive or it can be very low cost. Just depends on what direction you want to go. And I found it interesting that you know about the 0.2 and how they charge.
Oh, yes.
I worked for a law firm for several years out here, and I was just surprised how much money goes into this and the way they bill. If you send an attorney an email, you're getting billed for that, for them reading it. If you call them, you're getting billed for that time, and you get charged in most cases in 0.6 increments. So 10 6-minute increments. So if it's a 1-minute conversation, you're getting billed for 6 minutes, and if they charge $450 an hour, that phone call costs you $20, $30, $40 for.
And it adds up very quickly. And I know I've had conversations where they receive the bill for the month and are just blown away. They didn't realize what was being charged, what they were being billed for.
We've had people call us and say, I spent $5,000 on a retainer for an attorney, and their assumption was that was the total cost. They thought, okay, $5,000, we'll get through this. Then they don't realize that it's a retainer, and I've done a lot of videos about this. It's a retainer. They get billed hourly. Your photocopies, postage, phone calls, emails are all billed against that, and it is gone in less than 30 days. And what I found is most of the time, all that's happened is the initial divorce papers were filed, and they're served, no financial disclosures, not even close to an agreement, because that's how it goes. I mean, it's crazy. Now that said, with mediation, let's tell folks how low cost it could be with mediation, say combined with our service, where let's say we do legal document preparation, we do the paperwork for them, and we take care of going to court and filing and serving and all that, but they need help with agreements. So we can kind of work cohesively together, our two companies. I would say we get the case filed, get things started, get their financial stuff out in the open, get that stuff done, and then generally, is that a good time for them to start the mediation process?
Yes. So the way that I work it, and I've done a lot of research, and I've talked to a lot of mediation firms, and I've worked with, I've gone through lots of pretty intense trainings. I continue to go and learn new things. The field is just expanding very quickly. And I talk to everybody that I can about, well, how do you set up your process, and how do you have your fee? And most attorneys, they do it the way attorneys do it, and it's pretty uniform, and that's how they do it. Non-attorney mediators have a bit of a different, and we can be more flexible, and we can decide we're going away from the attorney setup as far as fees. My initial consultation is free. Call me on the phone and ask me as many questions as you want. I'm not going to charge you for it. I'll take 30 to 60 minutes with you and explain the process, let you ask as many questions as you want. I'll send out a packet before that you can read through and ask any questions you want about that, the mediation agreement, what it all entails. And then after that, it's $150 per hour per party for each session. And they usually last, each session we max out at 3 hours. I find that after 3 hours, people just don't want to think anymore. That's about the maximum. And I know I have heard about marathon mediation sessions that go all day long, and people are just dead. They can't think anymore. They don't want to talk anymore. They don't want to try to come to any kind of agreement anymore. And there's not a whole lot of progress made. So I've decided that 3-hour chunks, if it's a simple mediation and the partners have talked extensively before they even come in, a 3-hour session is probably all they need. And
they may be mediating every part of their or maybe just a single issue. Right?
So many times I've had attorneys that don't want to deal with the emotional parts of mediation where children are involved. They ask me to step in and do the parenting plans because that's something that they're not comfortable with. They don't like the wife crying. They don't want to hear about all the trauma. and they say, hey, Lisa is a mediator and she's going to help you out with the parenting plan, and hopefully the two of you can figure something out as far as the kids are concerned. And then you can come back and we can talk about your money,
So what is the math on that? You said $150 an hour per party per
So what is
session.
that? So it's like $300 if you go the 3 sessions, so it's $900 for that session.
For 3 hours.
For 3 hours.
Okay.
If it's an extensive mediation to where they haven't even thought about anything, they're just starting the process, sometimes it will take 2 or 3 sessions to get through all of what they need to come up with.
It depends on how much they have.
But and there's no hidden cost. They're not going to get a bill, and I usually ask them to pay that before the mediation, depending. And if it goes shorter, then I refund them. I say, okay, I think this is probably going to be a 2-hour session.
Yeah.
And we knock it out in an hour and a half. Then I refund that amount.
Sure.
There are no hidden costs. And as far as the filing, this is why I think our two companies is such a great partnership, because as a non-attorney mediator, I don't have the legal background. I'm not allowed. It's illegal for me to drop any kind of legal documents.
Same with us.
So I...
Oh, draft legal documents.
Right.
Okay, I thought you said give legal advice.
No. No legal advice.
Yeah.
And I always say, you know what, it's probably a good idea.
We draft legal documents.
Yes, I was going to say, that's what you do. But no legal advice.
Right.
And, attorney mediators shouldn't be doing that anyway, but as a non-attorney, it's easy for me because I don't do the law. That's not what I do.
Right.
So that's where I say, but I have this great company that will get everything together that needs to be filed, and your costs are also extremely low
in comparison.
In comparison, and again, I've done a lot of research before I jumped into this field with both feet. A normal divorce with normal people that are not wealthy, they're not celebrities, they don't have a ton of money, they don't have a vacation house, costs anywhere between $60,000 and $100,000. That is an average divorce.
I've looked up those same, statistics, and it's shocking. And I think people don't really think that is true.
Well, it's not going. They think it's not going to be that for me because
Right.
we're going to keep the costs down and we're going to figure this out. But they don't realize how it adds up so quickly.
Very quickly, and that's the two attorneys combined. So they've
Exactly.
You have 30,000, they have 30,000, and I can tell you, having worked for an attorney, that is not uncommon. At the office I worked at, people would get their bills at the end of the month, and we'd have more people call us after receiving their bill and say, I want to settle, I want to settle, because they get their billing. I can't believe we're going to have nothing left at the end of this. And only, unfortunately, the attorneys win. So you take that, you take that 60, 100,000, even if it's, let's say you have a simple case, and you have all your agreements, which would make you suitable for my services, and you go to an attorney, that could easily run you $15,000 just because of the hourly rates of the attorneys preparing the documents, filing fees, and so forth. It can add up. So when you hear our fees combined, and just roughly, if you have minimal issues or just a few issues in maybe one session, you use our service for document preparation, Lisa's services for mediation for a session, you're talking right around $2,000 at the top of things, as opposed to...
Which is a quarter of a retainer that you would have to plunk down at the beginning before anything else is done.
Yeah, before they start the case. Yep, and that's after your $350 or $400 paid consultation.
Right, right. It really is, and it really is just such a stark difference. And then again, we have the time issue. We talked about the courts taking forever to even hear your case, and there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through before that even is on their calendar. We can do a mediation with your divorce, and it's up to you. The court doesn't tell you when you have to be there. You decide on your schedule what works best for you. It could be a month if you kind of have to space it out, and that would be the longest it would take for you to complete everything on your schedule, on your timeline, not somebody else's.
Yeah. Now, there are different types of mediators. You have attorney mediators, we kind of talked about that a bit. You have non-attorney mediators, such as yourself. And you have court mediators. You have the mediators at the court as part of the process. Could you touch a bit on the differences between, say, an attorney mediator, we're talking about the litigation mindset, non-attorney mediators, and I'd also like to know, at the end of the day, when you're done with mediation, what do they walk away with? And how is that beneficial to, say, you've mediated, Tim, we have all the conditions, the terms were ironed out. What do they have at the end of that? They have some type of a written agreement, that sort of thing.
Okay, so now the judge, it's a requirement, especially in family law, you have to meet with a family law mediator. The LA Superior Court systems require that mediator in the courthouse to be an attorney.
Right.
They don't allow non-attorney mediators in that process.
So what she's saying is when you go to, if you're going to go to court for a trial or a hearing of any type, you have to go to the court mediator first before they would talk to the judge. They're hoping you'll, in that court mediation, that you'll come to an agreement before seeing the judge. So that's what you're referring
Which
to.
is almost in my mind, and I've seen the other side in different organizations I've worked with. I've taken clients as I've advocated for them or represented them in a different organization. I've taken them to mediation. And this was while I was going to school to get my graduate degree in mediation, and I just thought this is not what I thought it would be like. This is not what I think the pure mediation process should be like. They give you about 15 minutes, maybe. They are attorneys, so they ask very directive questions. They will flat out say, no, I don't think that you should agree to that.
Really? So they're not really neutral.
They're not.
At that point. This is the court.
These are the court mandated, hired by the courts, the ones that they require you to talk to before you come into the judge.
Yeah.
And I hate to say this, but they pretty much are bullied. They're a little bit bullied into making this agreement quickly. You don't have a lot of time. The judge is waiting on you. Let's just get this run through. And it's an intimidating process for people.
And this is the reason I want to bring up the difference between court mediators, attorney mediators, and non-attorney mediators is because that is so, they're not there to sit for 2 or 3 hours and have these sessions and on your time, on your schedule. You're talking about a line of people a day or two prior to, or even on the day of your hearing, going in there, and they have 100 other people to mediate. They're pushing you through. So that's not what I call professional paid mediation, which is what you have, which is on your time. So I just want to get these differences out there. So why don't you talk a little bit about attorney mediators, people that are attorneys, and then they also offer mediation services, that litigation mindset.
Well, like I said, the mediation process is starting to kind of have a resurgence, a little bit of a rebirth, because like I said, it's never really gone away. It's just our particular culture has kind of smashed it down because of our different way of looking at things. It's coming back. Attorneys are very aware that that's something that may be a little bit of competition for them because they want to keep that adversarial. They want to drag these cases out. They want to have all of these billed hours. That's why they went to law school. So they see mediation and say, that's something that maybe I can do as part of my law practice. I can add that for a little bit more income and then give people the peace of mind. Oh, yeah, I've heard about mediation. I know you've read about it. I offer that as well. But the people are not getting the pure mediation process. They're getting an attorney who took a couple of weeks of training and is going to try their best to represent both people, when in their mind it's like, no, he should be doing that. No, she should be doing that. No, he should not be giving into that. And they're very directive.
So what kind of issues could come from that? Why is that not the probably best way of mediating?
Ideally, I mean, obviously you can't be completely neutral. I mean, I've had cases where I relate more. It's not always to the wife. Sometimes I relate more to the husband and think, what is her problem? She is being so, unreasonable. But you need to just, and sometimes you can even say that to the person, say, you know what, it feels to me like you are kind of, you're putting obstacles in the way of this, and what is it that you really are wanting right now? What's going on with you? And you can take them and separate them and not have the other person in and say, we've kind of come to a standstill. Let's hear what's going on with you. What is so important about this set of spoons that we're going to take 2 sessions on the set of spoons? You want to figure out what's the underlying
It's not about
cause.
The spoons. There's something else there.
Not about the spoons. It never is.
I mean, you have the master's degree in psychology. So you probably could pick up on those things.
It's a different background, and I think, definitely the attorneys are not going to want to take the time. I had an attorney I got to know pretty well in the training, and he said, as soon as the wife starts crying and they start going at it, I get up and I walk down the hall and talk to somebody until I can hear it's quieted down.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't want to deal with that.
But isn't that the point where someone really needs to be in the room?
Yes.
Like that should be the opposite.
Yes. And that's the mediator's job. as a neutral party, I'm here for both of you. Yeah, sometimes you're being a pain and you're kind of dragging the process down. Yes, and sometimes it's the other party, and you can sometimes call them out on that. But we want to bring the level of contention down. That's the only way, because I think we've had conversations before where you say people make the worst decisions when they're emotionally charged.
Right.
They don't make good decisions. So a lot of times a whole session will be letting them vent these emotions in a safe room where they feel like they can be heard. The other person is respectful, doesn't interrupt. Attorneys just don't know that process, and they don't have the patience to go through that kind of thing.
So folks are having difficulty communicating. They hire an attorney mediator to mediate for them, and they get to the point where they're having trouble talking, which is exactly what they hired them for. They get up and walk away.
Right.
So
you let me know when you're done. We'll get back to crunching the numbers.
Yeah.
Because they just want the process to get done, and they just want to kind of assure the public, we know mediation's another process, and we've read about it, and we offer that as well. But there's no way that it can be the same kind of process. It's litigation.
The mindset
for both of them. You know, it's
and
just
by
how
the
it's
way,
gonna
when the
be.
attorney gets up to go talk down the hall while you're arguing, you're still
They're
getting
billing
billed.
you.
Yeah.
They're billing you. 0.6, 0.5.
Yeah. So finally then on non-attorney mediation, so with your services, we've talked about the court and how that doesn't seem very ideal, attorney litigation mindset, and now with yours, how does that work? You know, in comparison.
And that's,
and we've talked about it a little bit.
And this is such a great opportunity because it's like you said, people just aren't aware that this is an option for them. They feel like we can get attorneys and go to war. Okay, we've heard about this mediation process. Okay, my attorney offers mediation, and they feel like that's their only other option. And it maybe is a better process than litigation, but the mediator you're working with is still looking ahead to thinking, we're probably going to end up in litigation anyway, and so that's kind of the end game. When you're coming from a completely different background, and I've met other mediators from like family therapists are taking on mediation because they have seen the aftermath of what happens to families, and they've had to deal with that, and now they're trying to prevent all of that chaos and disaster and destruction by offering mediation services, which I think is a great background, but a lot of times they feel like they need to partner up with an attorney to make themselves legitimate, and then the process kind of gets tainted again by that attorney fee setup, the litigation mindset, and it kind of goes off track just a little bit. But as far as finding a mediator that fits, and it has to be a good fit. You have to feel comfortable with the person. You have to trust them. You have to feel like, okay, this person's listening to me. This person, I don't feel like it's going to take my husband's side or my wife's side in this. I think that's a worry for some people. How are you going to be, how are you going to go take her side on this? Are you going to feel like she's right and I'm wrong? And I mean, that's a worry. Nobody can be really impartial. But as a mediator, that's our job, is to do that the best we can.
Right.
But I have a website, lsrmediation.com. I am on a lot of different mediation organizational sites, mediate.com and Southern California Mediation Association, and there's a couple of other ones. And when you look for a mediator, those are great resources because a lot of times they are private mediation firms that don't have that attorney background, and there's more and more of us coming because we're passionate about the process. We want to bring peace, especially in the divorce situation. We want to bring peace to these families and really save a lot of heartache. And so we're trying to focus and educate the public about these options that we're out there.
And that's why we're doing this today. Yeah, let people know that mediation exists and what they can do. So how does the law work in relationship to mediation? Because people want to know what's the law say? What's the law on this? You need kind of a foundation of what the rule is to make a good informed decision. So let's say, okay, there's going to be an issue of spouse support, let's say. What does the law say? Okay, was it a long-term marriage? How much should be paid? What would the court say? Because they need to know what might happen in court, perhaps, to know, well, maybe they should get spouse support for life, but you're in mediation and they're agreeing to 1 year because they didn't know the law said they could get it for life, just as a scenario. So they're, as a non-attorney mediator, and like me, unable to give legal advice, in mediation, how do you deal with that?
That's a good question, and that was something that, as I've sat through these different trainings, I worried, because you want to give your clients the best possible care. Like an attorney, you're held up to a standard. Now, at this time, mediation is not licensed. They're coming closer and closer to that possibility, and they're setting more and more firm guidelines as to how a mediator should behave as a professional, which is nice. It's always nice for the public to have these guidelines. As a non-attorney mediator, like I said, I can't draft the legal documents. I can't give legal advice. But to give you the best possible care and give you those options, I always recommend before even, during our first consultation, that you find an attorney that you trust, that you can ask these questions. And I also work with family attorneys that I can call on their behalf when they have these questions and ask those questions for them. And we've worked out, fee terms between the two of us as, consultation fees, but they need to know, like what the court says. Even if they decide to opt against the court, especially when there's money involved, they need to know, okay, well, like you said, what is the disso master? How does that work? There's so many different options. And I say, of course, I think it's a really good idea if you consult with an attorney. But I want to reiterate and remind you that this is your agreement, and it should be up to you, not them. So
do you recommend that they consult with an attorney before they mediate, or after,
you can
or
do
both?
It during the process. The first thing I ask them is if they've talked to an attorney, if they have any kind of representation. I have a referral list of attorneys that I trust and that know me, that I give them. Financial consultants, I have attorneys, I have definitely your company on there as well, which I think they should go directly to, but you can't give legal advice either. You can just get everything ready for them so that they can get it to the court when it's finished. And the attorneys that I have on my list are ones that don't nickel and dime, and they're willing to talk to them on the phone and answer questions without billing them, without asking for a retainer, without any of these things.
There's not many of those.
There are not many of those. And I think they're just on my list.
Yeah.
But it's, that was important to me to have clients have that available to them, because it is important that they know their options and that they don't feel like they signed an agreement and came to an agreement ignorantly and didn't know.
Right. Or years down the road, say, wait a minute.
Known. Right. So that's definitely not something I want.
So kind of the ideal scene would be, this is how I kind of see things. They maybe come to our services, and because what I try and tell people is, most of what we do is amicable cases where they already know for the most part what they want, but they don't have to have all the agreements. And the reason I wanted to get this information out there is, people don't need attorneys even if they're not in agreement.
Right.
You don't have to run to an attorney because you don't have an agreement. You can use our service. We can get the paperwork started for you, get the process moving with the courts. We'll move forward and work with you towards, and let you know about the agreements. And if you have struggles and problems, that's when you would call a mediator to get those little things ironed out.
Right.
And once those agreements are drafted and you guys agree to what the terms are going to be, they come back to us, and then we put that on the legal documents for the court, and that gets submitted to the court. And that's honestly how easy it can be, instead of hiring an attorney to do all these things. Because once you have an attorney, what automatically happens is your spouse is going to get an attorney. And
that's where the adversarial process steps in.
Because it's adversarial, they have to defend and fight for you. It's automatically, things that you were agreed upon are probably going to go away.
Right, they dissolve.
They're going to bring up new issues and new problems and all that. So hopefully, by us doing this video, people will watch this and say, wow, there's this new way of doing things. It's not really new, it's thousands of years old.
But new to our society, for sure. Yeah.
And we can, I don't want to say steal away business from attorneys. We want to give them the assistance they really needed. They didn't need litigation.
And in family law especially. Now, there are areas where attorneys are extremely beneficial to people in businesses, in tax areas. these are areas where that's probably where I would send you first. But when there's a divorce, when there's difficult family decisions to make, when there's kids that are sad and upset and they don't know what's going on, attorneys make it worse 99% of the time. And the court system is not where you want to have your family. You don't want to spend your time and your money when at the end you've lost your shirt, you've lost your sanity, things are 100 times worse than they were at the beginning of it.
Now, it takes two, though. There are certainly cases, divorce cases, that there's no way it's not going to an attorney.
Right.
People hiding assets, domestic violence. And
those issues come up. That's when I terminate mediation.
Yeah.
I mean, not everything can be mediated.
Right.
Unfortunately, I would love to think so. But when those issues come up, and those are on my intake questions, when I talk to people on the phone, I ask very specific questions about domestic violence and about, what types of financial issues are you having. Those are things that need to be straightened out. You can't come in and just smooth it all over and say, oh, we're all going to hold hands now and we're going to agree on everything. That's something that really needs the professionals, the legal professionals to step in.
So attorneys are there for those who need it. And there are cases. We're not here to say that no one should be using an attorney, because when there's people are hiding assets and doing those types of things and not playing fair.
No, you need that
the only
help.
way, or they have a business and they're hiding assets,
Definitely.
they're not showing their true income, or you need business evaluations. These are things where attorneys would be needed, but that's the very far and few between.
Yeah, there are not many like that.
95% of the cases are no attorney involvement.
Right.
Definitely they have some professional services like ours preparing their documents. They probably had some assistance with coming to agreements. But outside of that, they can save a ton of money.
Yes.
They can get through it and still have somewhat of a relationship with their spouse or ex-spouse.
Right.
Former
and be able
spouse.
to co-parent.
Co-parent. And that's particularly important
Yes.
with kids. So ideally, document preparation with us, mediation with you, that should solve things. After you put together the agreements, they could go to independent attorneys for consultation and say, hey, take a look at
check
this
it out,
agreement.
and I encourage that.
Take a look at this agreement. Does this seem fair? And then let them tell you what the plus and minuses are of it. And
come back and we can talk about it, for sure.
And you can come back and talk about that. Now, don't hire the attorney. Just go on a consultation. I'm always trying to help people save money.
Yeah, you don't have
Pay
to.
for a 1-hour consultation and let them review. Lisa would have put together the agreements. I would have put them on to the actual judgment documents for the court, and then you could take that before we file it with the court and you sign it. The attorney can review it.
And I definitely encourage, before you sign anything and make anything and send anything into court, I want everyone to feel comfortable. And because of our society and the way that we feel about our court systems and give them so much authority, it gives people peace of mind to know, okay, my legal person said that this is a fair agreement.
Right.
And of course they're going to ask and look at it and maybe say, I don't know, did you really agree to that? And that's something, that you can come back in and talk about if that's something that you're not completely settled. I don't want you to sign anything if you have any kind of reservations. That's, I'm not going to make you do that.
Very good. I think we covered quite a bit. Was there anything else we need to touch on?
I can't think of anything else. No, I just appreciate the opportunity to be able to let people know about this, and I think this is a good combo for, like you said, a majority of the divorces that are going on out there. It's just a money saver, time saver, and sanity saver for sure.
Yeah, and I was so excited to find you, because I had nowhere to send folks that needed mediation services. I was sending them out of town.
Yeah, it's nice to keep things in our valley.
It
for
is.
Sure.
It is. So why don't you just one last time, Lisa Schultz, your website and the best way they can contact you?
Okay. Well, I have a business phone number. I have an office on Magic Mountain Parkway, and my business phone number is 661-481-2202, and they can reach me no matter where I am. And my email address or my website is lsrmediation.com, and I'm combining everything. So that is.
And your email is lsrmediation@yahoo.com.
So yes, it's easy because my name is in everything.
Yes.
And like I said, I check my emails every evening, and it's on your schedule. So.
Free consultations.
Yes.
Take advantage of that. Make sure to give her a call. And I've already sent some clients your way. I don't know if you've gotten any calls or not?
I've gotten a couple, and like I said,
Yeah.
I check my emails because in the evenings I just forward them.
Very good, and that helps my business. If I can get, if I with confidence can get people and they say, Tim, we have no agreements at all. We have no agreements. Can we use your service? Yes, because I can refer you out to mediation
to get those
agreements.
Perfect.
And that's a beautiful thing.
Good.
This is Tim Blankenship with Divorce661.com, specializing in California divorce document preparation calls. We also give free consultations. Give us a call. We'll let you know if you're a good fit for our service. You can call Lisa if you have questions about mediation. Other than that, Divorce661.com is my website. We're on YouTube. We have several outlets, live podcasts and broadcasts. I'm just trying to get all this information out. Yeah, all this information out to folks and kind of pull the curtain back on how divorce works here in California.
Good.
So thanks so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
All right.